In the world of pianos, the term golden age gets thrown around a lot. Sometimes with a manufacturer in mind, sometimes with a time period, but the term can be very confusing. So today, Ted and I are discussing the golden age of pianos.
Hi, this is Ted with Alamo Music Center in downtown San Antonio, Texas.
I'm Patrick Marr. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channels, check out our other videos, sign up for notifications, like our videos, leave us comments. We appreciate your support and we love to interact with you. Ted, we have a history lesson today.
It's like the golden era and the golden age.
All together.
In one.
No, I'm glad you're here because you're kind of the historian of pianos as it is.
Yeah, there's kind of, almost like a preamble to the golden age, which is, a lot of times people refer to the golden age as it's getting invented and being perfected. Mm-hmm. So it happened in piano, but it's actually happened like years and years before the time frame that we're talking about. Okay, so people go, what time frame are you talking about? Mm-hmm. It's basically about 1890 to about 1929. Mm-hmm. So we have about a 30, 45-year history stretched around in there if you give or take a few years.
Okay.
And the Depression is what seemed to start really wiping out a lot of the piano manufacturers from local levels all the way out to the larger ones.
Okay.
But during that time frame is when the piano became the center of not necessarily luxury and opulence, but it was the time when you were a middle-class home if you had a parlor with a piano in it. Mm-hmm. And during this time, too, you have to remember there's no film, there's very limited recording, there's no radio. So what made a song popular? Well, if you went to the circus a lot, you'd hear that kind of music. Church, right? That's another thing too, church. Mm-hmm. But they didn't always play the latest Michael Jackson songs in church, all right? So it's like, I'm not saying that gospel music isn't popular. Mm-hmm. It's certainly one of the main influences in American music, but church didn't always bust out the latest, snappiest songs.
So they had theater, they had, there was...
Vaudeville theater peaks at this time, which means you have a piano there. And most people wanted, if the idea of having a piano in your house was that there's culture. Mm-hmm. And at this time, I know a lot of you find this hard to believe, but a really desirable job where you made a lot of money, and these were some of the guys that owned automobiles very early on, were door-to-door salesmen of sheet music. And that's how songs were determined whether they were popular or not. Mm-hmm. So, and that was the only way to really hear a song. And I had this interesting idea when we were talking about the golden age, golden era of pianos, and it's almost like all the manufacturers participated in this. This isn't limited to one specific brand.
Yeah, because it often gets thrown around with Steinway. It's like
this
the golden
is the year
age
of Steinway. Well, it's really the golden age of Piano Row where Steinway was located, and they had 5 or 6 other piano builders out there, and everyone was blowing and going, even piano builders in Chicago.
I'm going to jump to a question real quick in the middle of all this history, because it's something that gets paired along with kind of the golden age of Steinway or the golden age of blank manufacturer. Mason and Hamlin gets thrown into there. Does the term golden age refer to the quality of the instrument?
I think in a way it does, mm-hmm. because during this golden age era, you have the highest influx of extremely skilled immigrant labor force in New York City, mm-hmm. and in the other major cities, Chicago, where pianos were being manufactured. But what's interesting is this golden era and golden age of piano is not limited to the United States. It was big in Europe at that time. I mean, France was 100% free. You had a lot of musicians from the United States, particularly black musicians, getting out and going to live in Paris because treatment was better, and the piano was alive at that time. So it's not anything with a specific manufacturer. It was just the joy of music, and the joy of piano was in its infancy of spreading worldwide. And again, the Maple Leaf Rag was the most popular song in sheet music history. It sold 75 to 80,000 copies in its first year. In that time frame that we're talking about, it was the first piece of sheet music to ever sell over 1 million copies, which was kind of hard to fathom for people to understand, like sheet music. I mean, there were 1 million people out there learning at approximately the same time frame or within decades of each other, learning the Maple Leaf Rag. And so you don't really get a #1 popular song in the United States, even though there were things that were popular in film and they may have been on the radio or rare recordings, wax cylinder or plat. You don't get a very knock 'em out. The first major million-selling song that we've had comes after there's theater, after there's radio, and after there's film recording as well, the talkies, so to speak. And it's the Chattanooga Choo Choo by Glenn Miller Band or Orchestra, which is in 1942. Up until then, you didn't have a million-selling song.
Yeah.
And so records wasn't a product that was available. It was sheet music and to aid your talent to play the song in your home.
Yeah, it was very rare to see people having, the cylinders rolls.
Right.
It didn't really catch on, or it was excessively expensive, and not excessively expensive only. It was electricity in the house,
Right.
and it's interesting how it was the centerpiece of a home. It was like, okay, we could go see a show, we could go to church, we could hear all the music, but what really brings
hang
it
at
here?
Patrick's house.
Yeah.
He's got that piano in his front room, and either him, his wife, or his daughter, or his cousins coming over to play, and they play great. I mean, that was the main thing. Is you'd go to someone's house, the first thing you do, well, what I did was go raid their record collection. This time you go open up the piano bench and see what music they have. So you're looking for new songs to play. And so musicians used to go through sheet music. And it's kind of interesting because in our far room in the recital hall, some of those posters we have hanging up there are just old sheet musics that have been blown up poster side.
Yeah.
The cover of sheet music. And you can see we did them in black and white, but they were originally in color, and the artwork was really extensive. A lot of work went into printing and publishing sheet music.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it seems like piano, more than any other instrument, really brought kind of the full sound.
It did, and
it came from all angles, really.
Well, yeah,
you
because
had parts.
Circus music. Well, the piano was the first kind of mini orchestra at your fingertips. So if you were going to be playing with a bigger band like a circus band or a vaudeville act, all the harmony parts could be portrayed and played at the same time, so that you could have vocal practices. And if you were the pianist and you knew how the other pianist played, or maybe you were the same pianist in the band, being with the pianist is like rehearsing with the whole band without having to pay all the other players to be there.
Yeah.
And so that is the golden age, because you don't do anything in entertainment at business at that time without a piano. If you're a dancer, a tap dancer, how do you tap dance without a piano? Well, the phonograph and the recording industry changed a lot of that. And by the time that happens, it's a little bit after World War II. And the real commercial use of recording comes in to play. And one of the main motivators behind that was Bing Crosby, because all the orchestras and radio stations were live. And he had to go all over the place and say, hey, this is Bing Crosby coming to you live. And so he pushed real hard to get great microphones and tape recorders from Europe imported, so that he could send a tape instead of having to go himself.
So I do have a question. We talked about the quality of the instruments that were being manufactured at this point, being the best of the time. Moving forward, especially where we are today, has the quality of the piano increased, and what does that mean for the value of these instruments that were from this golden age? Are they really still considered best instruments?
There are some. It all depends. There's a lot of piano teachers and musicologists that believe that the best pianos ever built in the world were built between that time frame. Whether they were European or American or other worldly manufacturers, that time frame. And they mostly say that because historically there were so many great instruments produced in this country. And this is, leading up to the Great Depression. And of course there was all this boom, the economy was going, it was the roaring 20s. Everyone had to have a car and they had to have fancy clothes. And a piano was part of it, because a piano represented the culture of high life. And at its extreme form, the piano was at the center of the bandstand, and everyone's wearing a suit and a tuxedo, and it's a high-paying gig, and people pay a lot to go in there. Then the piano also shows up in the rinky-dink saloons. At this time, you get a lot of popularity in upright pianos, and you see there's some old film footages of Fats Waller and some of these great pianists playing, and they're not playing grands, they're playing uprights. With the wood taken off, because that's part of the show, you get to see the action. And for most people, that was the first time they could really see a guy play a piano and sing and entertain live while seeing the machine work.
That was interesting. When I was researching this, it was almost like the golden age of piano really kind of translated to the upright piano, because it was that people had access to it. And yes, having access kind of made this the golden age, is kind of what I was reading. It was like, yes, it's this incredible invention. We're having some of the best manufacturing being done, but it's going to more people than ever, and it's in the home more than ever. And really, it's because the access of an upright instrument was available, and they were able to transport it around the country, and they were able to get it to, little homes in the middle of nowhere. Right. And it basically, to me, I was like, well, we see a lot of these old 1920s or earlier upright pianos that were, oh, this is a family heirloom, or I got this, and a lot of them are falling apart. They're on their last leg. But they're gorgeous instruments. A lot of beautiful carving, a lot of craftsmanship beyond the playability of the instrument.
Ornateness.
And so you see, the craft, the caring of, maybe they're not going to make the best instrument that plays, but they care so much about the way it looks. They care about, this is a centerpiece of my house. They care about, this is who we are, this is the one we picked, and this is why.
And the other thing, too, that made the golden age of the piano is that is around the time where you start getting the very beginning parts of the film industry, where they're starting to let go of cowboy and Indians, because the film industry was first about filming real stuff. Mm-hmm. And they start getting into movies with plots and stuff like that. So you start seeing a little bit more opulence in film, and you start seeing what are the beginnings of musicals, mm-hmm. before they even had talkies. Yeah. And then once the movies came out with sound, well, then everything was all musical. Mm-hmm. And so there was always a piano based. I mean, a piano was normally what you heard with tap dancing. Yeah. A piano is what you heard with an orchestra or any kind of skiffle band. There was always something based on a piano, because you have all of the notes there.
Yeah, and so to kind of wrap this full circle, what killed the golden age of piano?
What killed the golden age of piano was a combination of two things that was really, really hard to recover from. And one is the Great Depression. Mm-hmm. That wiped out more than half of the piano manufacturers in this country. And before that actually happened, where they actually went bankrupt, you had a lot of these consolidations.
Yeah,
so instead of all these guys going broke, they got bought up, and then the main guy went broke. Mm-hmm. And if they weren't broke by the beginning of World War II, they were making something different other than pianos by World War II. Mm-hmm. And that comes back to what really made the golden age of piano, is what made that era of World War II, quote unquote, the greatest generation, is that essentially the country got off its ass and produced and made stuff. Mm-hmm. And we had such a high influx of extremely skilled labor force that came into this country. You can check the records at Ellis Island from the late 1880s to the 1929. There was an influx of all kind of skilled craftsmen. And when they landed in the major cities, there was always a job, mm-hmm. around a piano manufacturer, and certainly the ones that were selling a lot. Didn't matter if they were the best of the manufacturers, because all the pianos at that time were all made within the same neighborhood of each other, including Steinway and Sons. And mm-hmm. there were some great pianos that we've had that were made on that piano row. And there are some musicologists and piano teachers that we have affiliated with Alamo that swear pianos have not been built with the same care, design, consideration, and craftsmanship since. Mm-hmm. And I find that hard to believe, because we don't do the ornateness stuff, and we've got it more scientifically.
It's more about
nailed down to
the playability of it.
The playability.
And so, this is, our take on the golden age of piano. I would be curious. I think we are going to explore the idea of a second golden age.
What it's really about the world seeing and hearing at one time the celebration of this instrument, mm-hmm. showing up. Because up until then, if you didn't see a piano and hear someone play, you had no idea what it was.
I'm going to challenge us to dive into this topic later, but I believe we are entering, or have been in for the last 10 to 15 years, a second golden age of piano as we know it, through digital instruments. And so I think that's a topic we might discuss later, but if access and availability of quality instruments that can entertain and educate was what led to the first golden age, I believe with the drop in the price and accessibility of digital instruments, we are somewhat entering the second phase of a golden age, and especially with recording software, with MIDI instruments, you see this resurgence of 88 keys doing something for kids, for parents, for enthusiasts, for hobbyists. And I'm going to leave it at that because I think we have a whole nother video topic
Yeah,
on
because that goes right on to what I call the golden age of musicianship. And it's here now with the younger generation, because when I listen and see what they're doing with the digital.
It's incredible.
I'm talking about a box with a bunch of colored buttons on it. I don't, it's an instrument. And to see and hear what people do with that, as well as the digital pianos, is just fascinating.
Yeah, so make sure you guys are subscribed so you can check out that second video when we do make it. But this has been the golden age of pianos. Ted Barslew, I'm Patrick Marr with Alamo Music. Thank you guys for watching.